All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to another amazing show. We've got an amazing guest for you today who's going to talk about, his experience with 1031 exchanges and DSTs. He's from Northern California, and we're super excited about today's show. So let's get it on. Well, Erica Traulsen, another show. Man, we went into the show before I was able to finish my sentence, but welcome to Learning Local 1031.
You said
How
let's
are
get
you?
on, and I think it's too exciting. Had to
Let's
move
get
on.
going. Okay, we always get going. We're always super hyped and super excited because there's so much great information that we're providing for all these people. How are you doing? How's motherhood? How is the baby?
So good. I was just thinking we haven't talked about her in a hot minute on the show, actually. She's great, though. She started laughing more often. Big sister can make her laugh literally anytime, anywhere. And now she's doing that silly little thing, blowing spit bubbles constantly.
Oh,
Hilarious, but very wet. Just
oh my gosh.
you
I
have to
miss
be
those
prepared
days.
for whatever you're wearing is just gonna get soaked with.
Well, I absolutely miss those days. My daughter obviously is a lot older. She's turning 29, but I miss the days when I was holding her as a toddler. I know, right? And time flies, but these are the golden years, Erica. So enjoy it. Always great to have you here. Erica, who are you? Who's Erica? Who is Erica Traulsen?
I am an investment advisor specializing in Delaware Statutory Trusts, passive real estate. And we're going to talk about how and why I do what I do shortly here, because today we are focused on estate planning when you own investment property. And that is why I brought our special guest on today. But because what I do is I focus on people estate planning who want to go passive with their real estate. Maybe they're tired of, I keep going back to the crawling under the sink when there's a leaky pipe, because that's what my family has dealt with so much. For some reason, it's always plumbing, right?
Yeah.
But older properties too, a roof replacement coming up, impending, or whatever other capital expenditures, those can be big and daunting. And when you want to enjoy your retirement, you don't want to be, dealing with plumbing issues, dealing with vacancies. That's a huge hit to your income, especially if you're living off of fixed income, right? So estate planning is constantly where my mind is when I'm talking to people about their real estate and especially their investment properties. And that is why we brought on our very special guest today, Vincent Gonzalez, with KW. He is a colleague of mine in the Northern California area, and we're going to get into that very quickly. Oh, welcome, Vincent. We see his lovely in a moment, but really quick before we dive in, we are going to thank our sponsor.
Located in Rancho Bernardo, we've been around for over 26 years, and we've done over 60,000 tax-deferred exchanges. If you don't do a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, you could be faced with about 30 to 40% in taxes, right? Wouldn't you rather roll that over to the next property so that you can buy more with it? Well, we're here to give you your options. Let's talk.
Oh, who's that handsome guy? My favorite exchanger.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Vincent, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Love your guys' program and excited to be here.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so Vincent Gonzalez, Keller Williams Realty here in Roseville. It's about 20 minutes east of Sacramento, which is the capital of California. Not too many people actually are familiar with Roseville, but Northern California. 11 years in real estate, and I specialize with helping families and specifically seniors plan their estate and their all the things that involved with planning their inheritance, and not just helping folks sell their house, but actually making a strategy around their next move into their stage of life where they're slowing down and ready to enjoy all their hard work.
Yeah, and we don't want to let their real estate be the thing that's slowing them down, right? So for our audience, I'll fill you in. Vincent and I met long ago, gosh, 3-ish maybe years ago now, at a that doesn't seem that long ago, but it's like one of my daughter's full lifetime, so it is like a lifetime ago. And we met at a chamber event, and hit it off with this like mutual focus on estate planning with real estate. And so we gather with another group of folks every now and then to talk about strategies and what each other should know in our various professions about real estate and when they're estate planning. So we thought we'd bring you some scenarios today. Chris is gonna maybe ask us about some of those, and why don't we get started?
Absolutely, let's do that. So as a QI, as a qualified intermediary, we've been in the business for 29 years. We've done over 60,000 tax deferred exchanges with so many clients across the United States. And as a QI, what we do is we facilitate that 1031 exchange for our clients. When they sell their relinquished property, their rental property, let's say it's $1 million in gain, that $1 million is transferred or wired to Exchange Resources, where we hold those funds in trust for the investor until they identify and close on their replacement property. And replacement properties can be anywhere from land, commercial property, multi-units, industrial property, and even Delaware Statutory Trusts, which is what we're going to be getting into today, which allows the investor to get passive income without having to manage any more properties. And Erica and Vincent will go into detail with that. But that's what we do as an exchange company. And from there, we need the help of Vincent to obviously find the replacement property and educate a lot of these investors on what their options are. And Erica specializes in the Delaware Statutory Trust, which is a qualified up-leg property that investors can roll their funds into to get that passive income. So I just wanted to make that clear that that's what we do. And so for the first scenario, people or investors sometimes want to go out of state, move out of state, when they move out of state, they want to bring their properties closer to where they live. So, it's difficult sometimes for them to understand, do they want more properties? Do they want more rental properties? Or do they want to not have more properties? So let's talk about that scenario where people are actually moving to another state and trying to move their properties closer. What sort of strategies can we talk about there, Vincent and Erica?
Well, you can go ahead.
And that's the conversation I'm having most of the time is, hey, we want to sell these investment properties. We have our primary home. We own 2 or 3 other properties. I'm in Roseville, so we get a lot of that relocation from, say, the Bay Area, where their average price point is $1.1 million. We're closer to $650,000 here in Roseville. So it's like we want to sell these, but we might be getting hit with some capital gains. What's our options here? Let's go over all the options. So that's usually the most important topic or most popular topic I'm getting asked most of the time. What can we do here? And a lot of people aren't familiar with the 1031 exchange option. A lot of realtors aren't either.
Absolutely. Well, Erica, let's bring up the point where if they've lived in the property for 2 out of the 5 years, let's say they've lived in the property for 10 years as a primary residence, what are some of the benefits that they have regarding taxes when they sell that property?
Yeah, so we do see a lot of people doing this, especially relocating. And I don't know if Vincent, if you've seen the same, a lot of people that seem to be leaving California are heading to Florida. Like that's their retirement destination, right? So when they're heading out of state, just like you said, the Bay Area, it has a higher price point than Roseville, but then like Florida, a lot of it has a lower price point even than here, So people leaving California, they're going, they may or may not want to bring their property with them, right? It's hard to manage from afar, especially not just Bay Area to Sacramento, but from California to Florida. Maybe they don't want to bring their properties with them. Maybe they don't want them to follow. But if they do, So I recently encountered this with someone in a retirement community near where I am, and they're selling off a property in the Bay Area, and they want to purchase a property there where they live, but the price point's significantly lower. They're going to have 250 to 300,000 left over, and that's boot. And there's not a whole lot you can buy or that you want to buy with only 250,000 or $300,000. So what are they doing? They're going to roll the rest into DSTs. So Delaware Statutory Trusts, fully passive, 100% passive, securitized real estate, 1031 eligible, right? So we get those clients, they're like, yeah, I'm going to buy another rental. I like the pride of ownership. I want to, if they're going to Vincent, they're going to sell their property with him. He can help them buy another one. And then when there's that leftover, because to fully defer your taxes, you have to buy equal or greater in value in your exchange. As Chris always remind you. So
you have to move over all the debt, and you actually have to move over all the gain. So think of that loan on your existing property as cash. It just belongs to somebody else. It belongs to the bank. So if it's $1 million property, $500,000 gain, and a $500,000 loan, all of that has to be moved over, and you actually have to get a new loan to replace that $500,000 debt. But what about these seniors or the baby boomers who can't qualify, to get another loan on another property? What then?
And that's what I'm seeing a lot in my area, right? A lot of these homes, these seniors are feeling like they're locked in, like they can't do anything with them. So there's literally properties just sitting there vacant, and they're actually losing money. And a lot of folks think that, well, there is no other option. Like, I don't feel like dealing with tenants. I'm just going to let it sit there. And if I'm losing money, who cares? There's nothing else I can do. I'm going to get hit with capital gains. And they're moving out of state. A lot of times when I'm meeting with folks, they're moving to South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida. These are popular retirement areas, and it's just a lot more affordable there. Say if you can afford something a lot cheaper to live there, or just the living expenses are just a lot lower. And so when I'm meeting with some of the seniors, I'm going over these options with them. Have you thought about a 1031 exchange? I would say 90% of the time they haven't. They're like, well, I'm not really familiar with that. Is that like an investment thing, or how's that work? How much does it cost? And so if you go over the numbers with them, I'm not pushing it on them. I'm not saying you have to do this. Let's just look at all the options. And
just educating. Yeah.
And we can pick one that works for you, other than just thinking there is no other option, just to hold on with it. I'm stuck with this property.
And what do you do, Erica, with these clients? Do you do an analysis for them so that they can kind of see all the numbers and figure out what options that they actually have as far as what they can do, keeping the property, rolling it over to another investment property, or maybe doing a DST and seeing what kind of return that they get? So you give them kind of options, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have software that will run a full net cash flow analysis. So we're looking at, how often will a property turn over in the next 10 years? What is the time frame between turnover? What is the cost of a turnover of a tenant? If they're tired of managing tenants, and some of them have long-term sticky tenants too, someone who really likes where they are, they like the school district, or they like, something that's keeping them there, keeping them in place. I personally have never stayed in a rental property. When I was renting, like Chicago, I think was the longest for 2.5 years. But other than that, I didn't have kids. I wasn't worried about a school district, but a lot of these tenants are, or they've, built their business near there. A landlord in San Diego I worked with they had a tenant who ran a daycare out of the back room of the house, and they had been there for 12 years. But let me tell you, that turnover before the sale took like 2 or 3 months and cost them $30,000 because the tenant was there for so long. And then that also meant that the rent was so absurdly low. Like, good for her, good for the tenant, she could afford it. But that landlord who's 83, struggling to walk up the 3 front steps to the front door, like the rent growth went like this and the appreciation went like this. So where they were once making, there's a small gap, which means that, 10% cash flow, 12% cash flow. it goes like this, right? And the appreciation's getting higher and the rent's growing teeny tiny baby steps at a time. I mean, they were looking at a negative cash flow by the time they did that turnover for 30 grand. It didn't even cover rent for the next year, right?
Exactly.
People like that need to be shown their options. He doesn't have to keep that property for the rest of his life. He can do something passive. His 4 kids who are going to inherit property, they can do it in even amounts and not just one of them dealing with selling off a property after he passes, things like that.
Yep. So Vincent, what are some of the questions that you ask about whether or not they want to continue to own properties? You know, what questions do you ask? How do you determine whether or not they want to buy more properties and be a landlord, or just do away with it completely?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Everyone's different. So I never tried to assume anything when I meet with a client. You know, I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They assume they just want to sell because they called you to come over and get the value of their home.
Yeah.
I can get you the value of your home, but really, what's the big picture? What are your plans for the next 4 or 5 years? You know, I ask them that, and then we can kind of build it from there. Are you wanting to be a landlord still? If not, well, let's work out some scenarios that might work best for you. I can get the home value. I can see what it's worth. I can give you a net sheet, you know, after all the deductions, and see how much you're going to net. If there's capital gains, I can connect with the tax advisor. We can break that down. And then we'll also get some scenarios from Erica to see what those 1031 exchanges looks like, so that you can compare the differences, and then they can decide from there, like, okay, well, it doesn't really make sense to be a landlord anymore if I can just have this option with a 1031 exchange.
Yep. And one of the questions that I ran into was, ask them this question: how do you like being a landlord? Do you love it?
Right.
What are the best things about being a landlord that you love, right, Erica?
A lot of people fall into it, right?
And,
like
I would say rarely, maybe 1 in 20 landlords actually enjoy it. Like, there are some people that love going to the house and, you know, talking with the tenant. And to each their own, you know, and everyone's different, and you know, whatever you prefer.
That's a hot button, definitely.
They fall into it, which is kind of the second scenario we're going to talk about. They become a landlord because they downsized, right? So a lot of people have a home. We were talking about this yesterday, Vincent. They downsized. They had a home that they raised their family in, right? So like this beautiful home here on the screen, you know, 4 or 5 bedrooms, raised their family. Now their kids are grown. They have adult children who are living elsewhere for a job, or, you know, with their families. They're not moving back into that home, but mom and dad have downsized. They have gone into maybe senior living, you know, potentially whether it's assisted living or on their own, somewhere like a Del Webb, Sun City type of situation. Regardless, they don't need 4 or 5 bedrooms for themselves, right? So they're downsizing and they're focused on, well, I'm retiring, or I have retired, and I'm just going to start renting out that home. We've paid it off. We're just going to rent it out, and that'll be our income. But they're not thinking about these things like the upcoming roof that's going to need replacing, the plumbing that's going to need fixing, the HVAC that, you know, somewhere like California where it can get hot as heck, you know, in the summer, depending on where you're living, they're going to need to be taking care of all those expenses. And at the end of the day, it might not be great cash flow. But even bigger than that, Chris, earlier you mentioned if they've lived in the home for at least 2 out of the last 5 years and then have converted it to a rental, they can do this beautiful combination of the Section 121 exclusion. So they essentially like are excluding $250,000 or $500,000 if filing jointly of the capital gains that the IRS isn't going to after them for taxes on at the sale. So they get to like discount that out of capital gains. And then if they've been renting it out for 2 or 3 years, do a 1031 exchange. Maybe they want to go passive. Like they fell into being a landlord because they downsized. What a beautiful combination for people.
Yep. And for a lot of the seniors who are facing, medical issues and they need liquid cash to, pay for some of these things that can happen to them in the future, having that 121 tax exclusion, if you're married, that first $500,000 of that gain goes straight into the bank account and it's tax free. the other 500,000 or $1 million left in gain can actually be rolled into, a DST where they're going to be able to get that passive income from that 500,000 to $1 million. So it serves both purposes. And I don't know if have you ever run into that situation, Vincent, where they've taken advantage of both those scenarios?
Exactly. Yeah. Where that's usually one of the big priorities is, hey, we have these medical expenses. We're looking at ways to find out how to try to pay for them. Is there anything we can do with these different, options to pay for that stuff? And a lot of times they're just not educated about it.
Yeah.
And I always, again, approach it as, this is not something you have to do. I'm not pushing it on you. Let's just look into it. Let's just look into the numbers. We'll compare all the numbers and see which one works best for you, because everyone's scenario is different. So you really don't know until you start breaking down those numbers. And a lot of these landlords, honestly, I see don't really have organized spreadsheets where it breaks down these numbers for them. They're not really tracking. They're not really taking on account of some of these expenses. Roof, what they paid, HVAC, repair costs over the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Turnover costs. Yep. And that's why you have Erica, because she's got all the numbers.
I'll run all those numbers for you guys anytime. But when we're talking about liquidity, not only, some people didn't live in the home before they transitioned and started renting it, so they can't use that 121 exclusion. How are they going to unlock some equity, have some liquidity? Well, you can't sell a bathroom, right? You can't sell just the bathroom to get 10 grand out of your rental home. So, I always bring that up when people get concerned over, if we're talking DSTs, and they go, okay, well, you're saying that the standard for some of these is a 5 to 7 year timeline, some up to 10. And then there's the 721 UPREIT exit of a DST. They've gone passive into DSTs for 2 to 3 years, typically. Some are a little longer. But once they're in a REIT, a real estate investment trust, they have unlocked some liquidity options, but they, if they're concerned about having some liquidity, we are going to talk to them about what do you think might be some upcoming expenses that in their retirement years, they're not thinking about a situation like mine, you're going to pay however many grand to the hospital to have your baby, but maybe they are going to have grandkids and they want money for a 529 plan. Maybe they, don't know because they're older and they're worried about having a fall and needing a hip replacement. Like, who knows? That was my dad. Hopefully not watching today and hearing me tattle on him about that, but he fell and broke a femur, and that was only a number of years ago. That's a huge medical expense. Like, you can't sell a bathroom to get some equity, and maybe you're not eligible for a loan. So there are options, and maybe that option is exchange most of your property, sell it. Let's say it's $1 million for easy numbers, and you want to take 200 grand out. Great. Take that out of your exchange, pay the tax, put it in the bank, do whatever, invest it somewhere liquid, and exchange the other 800,000. That's the beauty of an exchange. You can do it in whatever amounts you want, as long as you're willing to pay the tax on the amount you don't exchange. I think we heard that we have some questions that came in. Okay. I can't see them, but here we go. What is the number one estate planning mistake you see boomers make with rental property they want to leave to kids? Ooh, that's a good one for you, maybe, Vincent?
Well, I think the most popular assumption that baby boomers have is that their kids actually want to inherit the whole property. I will say it's rare that I see the kids actually excited to inherit the whole house. They prefer to have funds to work with, or they might not even be living in that same area, so now they have to deal with that. So I would say that's probably the biggest assumption that I see most families do wrong, plan for that, doing wrong, and then it actually creates friction for the family. I'm dealing with a few of those now, where everyone has different expectations. Known expectations are ever exactly the same of what they thought their parents wanted for that property or several properties, and it ends up creating a mess. So it's like, hey, that might be the best option for a family. But then again, let's talk about these other 1031 exchange. It might be a lot simpler for families.
You're so right. I have a recent case where there's a woman who sold her property and had, we'll just call it an even $2 million to work with in her exchange. A son on the West Coast, a daughter on the East Coast. Daughter loves living near where she works, doesn't want to move out of there to live in $1 million home. And what she initially thought was, I'm just going to buy a duplex where my son lives. He and his wife are going to live in one half and pay me fair market rent so that it's 1031 eligible. You can't just, gift it to your kids, then it's taxable. But live in one side of the duplex and then manage the other side of the duplex. And I said to my client, does your son like the idea of being a landlord? And she said, no, but he's going to help me out. And, he gets to live in half of it. And I said, great. Did you know there are other options? And at the end of the planning stage, we ended up with son and daughter-in-law have, say, that rough $1 million, half of her exchange value in a single family home. And daughter is getting DSTs, fully passive. And when she inherits that, she can do with it what she wants. But we've divided it to what each of the children, each of the beneficiaries actually wanted, and not just what mom wanted to, thought she had to do, because she didn't know there were options.
Amazing. Yes. And I love to hear those conversations that families are having.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the reason why they fight or they have issues is because they don't know what they are. And that's why education really is the key, getting in front of them. And then you going out there into the cities and educating these people is really the key. And, Erica's been doing this for a while. She's an expert at DSTs. Obviously, you've been doing this for over 11 years. And you know what it takes from, estate planning as far as, cluttering, decluttering the house, to moving out of the house, to getting into the senior home, to then selling the properties and then getting this passive income. And really and truly, that's what I would like when I retire. Is I don't want to have to deal with tenants. I want the money to be coming in while I'm on the cruise, looking at the beautiful blue ocean on my way to this beautiful island where there's a Mai Tai waiting for me and a hammock. I don't want to deal with calls in the middle of the week or in the night. And then my children will inherit that passive income. So all of these are great scenarios.
And that's the plan, right? As you get into those years, for your income to be as passive as possible, you don't want to keep inheriting more and more issues as you get older. You want it to be easier. Yeah. And I think it just comes down to education. I think people do the things with their investment that maybe their families did or their parents taught them to do, and they just don't know anything other out there or other options. That's where I think that's the part I really enjoy doing, is educating folks on the options that are out there, connecting with professionals like you guys, and having those conversations. Hey, did you know that this is out there? And I think a lot of the time they're very relieved. They're like, wow, I didn't know you can do that. I know that when I first heard that 11 years ago, I was like, wow, everyone should be knowing about this.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is, as Erica knows, what is this right here? Reverse improvement exchanges. This is another question. Inventory is tight. How are reserve exchanges, built to suits, improvement exchanges being used differently this year? Okay.
Reverse exchanges. But yeah, reverse exchanges and built to suit.
Yes. So with regard to reverse exchanges, for some people who are afraid of that 45-day timeline and they can't identify a property, they can do a reverse exchange. They can buy their property first, close on that property, and then have time to sell the relinquished property. But you can't be on title to both properties at the same time. That's why an exchange accommodator title holder is in place to drop the replacement property into that corporation so that it takes title off of that property and allows the investor to sell their relinquished property. But you can't do a reverse exchange on DSTs. Only if they want to buy more properties can they do a reverse exchange. And built to suits obviously are for people who want to buy a property that they want to fix up, invest a significant amount of money to make those improvements, and then close it and then turn around and rent it. But in this scenario, I don't think that these two will really apply for many of these baby boomers who really don't want to do that anymore. And that's where number 4 comes in, and the client says, I'm too old for this. I don't want to do this anymore. What is the solution for me? And if you bring up that slide, Emerson, it's our last scenario.
Yeah, and we'll I think touch on
maximum tax benefits.
People don't want to, if they don't want to be a landlord anymore, they should be talking to someone knowledgeable, like either of you guys, and hopefully, getting in touch with someone like me if they want to be out of the landlord situation. They should be going passive, and we can help determine if that's right for them. For some people, it's not. For some people, it's liquidity, full liquidity, cash out. What are you actually going to owe in taxes? We'll help run like an estimate on what that'll look like, where we're remembering things like depreciation recapture. But since I know we're kind of out of time, if we wanted to do our words of advice, my main thing is it's never too early to start planning, right? You're not locking yourself in to one situation because you start talking about it, you start planning. One of my clients has been in this process for 4 years. Now, granted, she wanted to take advantage of the 121 exclusion as well. So she rented out her home and, is planning out that, but it's a process, and she's been learning about it for 4 years. I was like, what else can I teach you? Or what else, you're coming to me for advice. Yes. But is there anything you're lacking knowledge on? But 4 years of planning, like it's not too early. So start the planning early. You don't have to have a house listed to start talking about your exchange or thinking about your exchange. What about for me, Vincent? What words of advice would you give?
Exactly. And on top of that, you're not obligated. If we're having those conversations, you're not obligated to do something with us. We can help educate you. We can run those scenarios for you, and there's no obligation. Say if you don't end up using my real estate services, hey, no harm, no foul. We can just have the conversations, talk about what's out there, and then whenever the time's ready, because I think some folks feel like we're not really ready at this point yet. We'll call you when we're ready in 6 months or a year. It's like, hey, no worries. We can talk about it now. And so this way you're having a plan to work to when the time comes. You're not, when something happens, you're not running and panicking and trying to hurry up and put something fast.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think for my advice, obviously I love how you do business, Vincent, where it's like, there's no pressure. We just want to be able to provide you the information. And many of these baby boomers, maybe some of them have been scammed or taken advantage of. And, during their lifetime where there's pushback, they don't want to lose their purse. And I think that that's one of the things why they're so resistant to looking into these things, because they don't want to lose money. And with Erica, I know that, I don't know how many sponsors there are. I think maybe there's over 100 sponsors now with regard to DSTs, but not all sponsors are created equal. Erica, would you say like maybe only 20% or 30% of all the sponsors that provide these DSTs are actually credible and are worthy of recommending these DSTs?
There are definitely only some that are worthy of our clients' time. And there are certainly some who do some creative financing or creative, do the numbers in a creative way, and I'll put it that way nicely. But to make a cash flow look higher, look better than it is, we have a really great, really strong due diligence team behind us at my broker dealer, who's thinking about that for our clients as well, and they want to make sure that they are not going to be in those situations that are so scary when they're in this phase of life, that they're thinking about their estate and how to protect it.
Yep. And we are fiduciaries. So we are doing everything in the best interest of our clients. And we want to be able to make sure that they understand that, this is information for you. There's no pressure, especially when they're older. They want to analyze things and they want to talk to their family and make sure that it's the right decision. So I'm glad that that's what we do, especially for a lot of these seniors who want to feel comfortable about moving forward with that process and make sure that they're not taken advantage of and they're not going to lose any money. So
I would say, let's talk to the whole family. Let's bring the whole family in. We can have that conversation with everybody. It doesn't have to be just one-on-one,
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, thank you guys so much. This was a great, topics today that we talked about. I think we could talk about it more. Vincent, I would love to have you on the show again. Erica, I think that, we should have some more topics to discuss because a lot of people are going to definitely benefit from this.
Yeah,
right?
we
that'd be fun. I would love that.
We could sit here and talk estate planning and real estate all day, but since we're out of time, we're going to put out our platform.
So make sure that you join school. grow our community. Thank you so much for being a part of this amazing show today. We're here to provide information to help you make the right decisions in real estate and estate planning. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you at the next LEARNin Local 1031.